I open the meeting up, and first order of business on the agenda is item number 1, which is review and approval of meeting minutes from June 19th, 2017. Give the committee a few minutes to take a look at the minutes and entertain any edits, clarifications, or any other commentary related to that.
Oh, that's right. If the selectmen, they have policies and procedures, is there a central place it is? Is there a policies and procedures book, manual, notebook?
Mass Municipal Association has a book. In fact, I may have one, but it'd be old.
But as they change, because Mr. Fleming mentioned, over the years, we've altered policies, updated policies, changed policies, and I'm wondering where that is.
That's in Mass Municipal Association, the Selectmen's group will have those. They put them out sometimes twice a year.
Okay.
When something new comes out.
So we're going
We'll
to
take a look at that.
Have a motion to accept the minutes on June 19th, 2017 in the drafted form.
I will second that motion.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the town manager review committee meeting minutes for June 19th, 2017 as written. Any other questions, clarifications, or discussions from anyone from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Nothing carries unanimously.
Everybody was here.
Okay, the second item on tonight's agenda was a pause. I just want to talk quickly to the committee members. We had talked about leaving the last meeting, about getting right into talking to the town manager and the interim town manager and the previous town manager. From the 19th to tonight, that was a short amount of time. We're getting people together, getting an invitation out. More importantly, I reflected more about what we went through in that question and answer session, which I think was somewhat lengthy, and I think Alan had brought that up once or twice about that. So, and I've spoken briefly to Deb before the meeting started about how you had made a comment that we were somewhat general in our questions, and I think that led me to pause to realize that bringing those two individuals into the committee to have a discussion, I think it makes a lot more sense for us to develop some questions to provide to them in advance, so they can be more prepared to things that we're focused on. So I wanted to open up an item number 2 on the agenda tonight on how to accomplish that, because I think that would be very, very helpful, and I think it would help get some information out in front. We could even ask them to provide some of the information to us ahead of the meeting, if that would be the case. And I think, like everybody else said, I think sometimes when people take the time to sit down and put things in writing, you tend to get things back a little more, you get a better quality of feedback and input, as opposed to being put in a chair in front of a group of people and trying to answer questions off the cuff. So with that point, I want to kind of open up that discussion point to the committee, so we can go ahead and make an organization and an invite to those folks with some information ahead of time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The two people mentioned are the only ones that have worked under this town manager's act. So Blythe Robinson, by name, the last town manager, has worked, I think, about 7 years?
I think it's
6 and a
7 years.
half.
Okay.
7.5 years with this particular act. She would be a great one to know if there is something that could be changed. She would know very well. And also, Town Manager Reed, interim town manager, has worked in many towns and knows a lot about the Town Managers Act in different towns. Maybe he would be a great one to really pinpoint on what do you need in there to help you manage the town better, or what is in there that could be taken out because it's a hindrance to a town manager, whatever. I do not know what those are, so these questions would have to be posted to them.
Correct, and I think I was asking for us as a committee to think about some specific questions, probably related to the petition, the original petition that put this committee together, and any of the things that we've talked about to date from our meeting minutes. The other thing too is, we've had several pretty productive meetings in terms of gathering information. This is also an opportunity to pause a little bit, to stop and think and reflect on what we have gathered and to get to that. So I agree completely with your points that I think we have the first town manager who served our community in that role. What I don't want to have happen is not get any kind of feedback or dialogue. We talked in the last meeting about good, bad, and indifferent, and with the last meeting, the feedback from the previous board of selectmen and the chairman, we didn't get much back in terms of a dialogue and discussion. We didn't get anything back. I shouldn't say that. I should say we got back that everything's good as is and don't change anything. So, which is fine. So that's the feedback they have provided to us as a committee. So given that, I want us to try to think about having some questions in advance. So with that said, I'll open up the floor, like I said, some more discussion about doing that, because I think it's important. And I think the other part too is I would like to put anything that we would ask about specifically back to the board of selectmen quickly for a quick review, in case they have a concern about any question they're going to ask.
I have a comment. Sure. First, the fact that the selectmen that we interviewed last time basically had no negative feedback is extremely important, and to presume that there must be some negative feedback to me is rather troublesome. If in fact there is no negative feedback, then there is no negative feedback. It's not up to us to go searching for negative stuff. It's up to us to ask the question. And I would say the only relevant question, again, is what is it about the current act that you, as the past town manager, and Mr. Reed as an experienced town, what is it about the act that you would change and why?
Right.
And if the answer is nothing, then that's the answer.
The point you're making, Steve, I think is absolutely spot on, because we have asked the three experienced selectmen on what they thought about it looking down. And now we need to invite the former town manager and the current acting town manager on what looking up is. And then we should take the composite of those and say, okay, is there anything that needs to be changed or whatever? But I think for us to generate questions, we're asking questions about, it's like a guy asking how to build a boat who's never seen one before. I mean, we're asking questions in the dark. What we need to do is find out what's, from an upward-looking standpoint, what they felt. And then, if there's some issues that drop out of that discussion, then there's a place to go. But until we have the
I'm going to say in a different way, maybe than the two prior speakers have said it. We have heard from the appointing authority, the managing authority, and I agree we should hear from the people who currently and previously fulfilled that role. I don't know that we need to hear from town employees regarding their experiences, quite frankly, because I think the mission statement says that it's going to be the mission of this committee to conduct a thorough, comprehensive review. Well, those are the best resources in my mind that we have spoken to, and who are the two that we hope to speak to review the effectiveness and efficiency of the Town Manager Act, because if you're going to start doing this, then I think you're going to want to talk with whoever's interacted with the police chief, who's ever interacted with the fire chief. You're shaking your head no, but that's what my feeling is, so I'm just expressing that, Mr. Chairman. Again, I don't think that we need to create individuals to meet his resources. Those 5 are the greatest resources to see whether this position is properly given authority or what needs to be changed, if anything, in my opinion.
And I do believe that we need to bring in some department heads, people that report directly, so we get a flavor for how that dialogue worked, both under the former town manager and the current acting town manager, to get a flavor on how that management structure works as input. I think that's important. Do we have to bring in every department head? I'm not sure that buys us anything, but it's something we should discuss if we don't get the dialogue that we need from the current,
And again, if we bring in the department heads, we ask them the exact same question.
Right.
What is it about the act that,
I think that question is too general. I mean, especially to somebody sitting there in that chair. You say, so what would you change about the act that maybe you've never read? And they're on the spot at that point.
but they're going to know that in advance.
It's not on the spot, because obviously people are reading about this or listening to it or talking about it, and honestly, it's the most appropriate question to ask.
It's a very appropriate
If I
question.
can just finish, please. If they can't answer that question, then I'm not sure it's worthwhile to hear whatever their answer is going to be. That's a simple question to somebody.
But it's too open-ended. I think we should...
It wouldn't be to me, I don't know if it would be to other members of this committee, but it wouldn't be to me if I knew I was coming here to meet with somebody that's reviewing the Town Manager Act, I got to think that I'm going to talk about what my experience has been. So, no? What do they think they're coming here for then?
I think we're going to ask the question, we're going to get the same answer. It's perfect the way it is, because nobody wants to come out and say anything. Whereas if you ask them more specific questions, you might, I don't know if you will, but you might yield more answers.
With 4 other people on this committee, and none of them have ever had any hesitancy in expressing their opinion. Somebody coming here as a town, as a department head, I don't recall there being any wallflowers as department heads when I was a selectman in this town. They were more than comfortable, whether talking in the coffee shop or talking in town hall. None of them were wallflowers.
Well, they have to work with the new town manager, though, whoever that person is, so, and there's politics always involved.
I
and there's
truly
stuff
understand that.
involved.
When I was a selectman, they theoretically were appointed by me to those positions, and they were more than comfortable expressing their feelings about whatever the issue was. So I disagree with you that somehow they're going to be hesitancy in their speech.
Yes, I can speak to that issue specifically. There were a couple of department heads that hated it. And no compunction about telling
I
you.
think this is an interesting part, to be honest with you. That's an example where, to be honest with you, Ellen, you're a very strong person in personality and style, how you come across. There are plenty of people that will become a wallflower in the face of somebody of that style and personality.
So what
It's
makes you
fine.
think then that if you ask 2 or 3
I don't think it would be
questions-
department heads. I think my point to this discussion and dialogue is, and I'm trying to actually zero in, as that brought up as one of her points. And I want to zero in on the things that were brought up in that petition. And there's really one item in that petition that actually is helpful in understanding that was brought up, and it was a best practices. At this point, this committee is not having a best practices discussion. We're having a discussion about do nothing or do something. That's the discussion and dialogue that's going on.
Well, that's our job. Our
Correct.
job is to do nothing if there's nothing wrong with it, and to do something about the act if there is.
There's
But
nothing-
the idea
But we're not
is,
having-
we can't rely on gossip, we can't rely on
Oh,
somebody that has seen or been under our previous town manager say, I don't like the Town Managers Act, because they don't like the town manager. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
the act.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 people specifically on this committee that I'm active in town government, in the town department, and, have the experience just like anybody else.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
again, my memory of our mission statement that we all voted on didn't include anything, that jargon, best practices or whatever that mean. That was going to be the standard that we're going to do it by. It isn't anywhere in our mission statement. So I'm not quite sure why that somehow now has become the bar, supposedly, that we're going to judge how
No, that came from
how
the
the
petition.
prior individual fulfilled the delegated responsibilities.
Yeah.
It isn't in the mission statement of this committee. It is to talk with the best resources to see whether there are any reasonable changes that should be proposed. So that's the extent, I think, of the resources we should reach out to. And honestly, if a department head is incapable of responding to a question, what was your experience and what would you change, then I'm not sure they're going to have anything valuable to share, honestly, because they're a manager themselves, and if they can't answer that simple question, I'm not sure I'm interested in what else they have to say.
And I would agree with Alan, and I would say that, and Richard, but one thing that continues to hang out there is the best practices. I don't like that term because it's a general term that doesn't go to specific issues and doesn't go to specific things. It's just like saying, okay, best practices is that you jump off a building and you don't get hurt. I mean, that's best practices, but
Sure.
in reality, if you jump off a building, you're gonna get hurt. So my point is that there's no specificity, just best practices, it's just a general term.
Just like there's no specificity to general questions, of which
No, not true.
there's been no discussion about anything specific.
That's not true. If we're going to ask a department head who, after 7 years, has no opinion on how it works, then we have two problems. The first problem is we have somebody who's really asleep at the wheel, number one, and number two is we should terminate them because they have no opinion.
Well, we don't
I don't know
get
how
terminated.
that's a discussion point that, I don't want to, that's an example of the kind of dialogue that this committee should have nothing to do with. Absolutely
But
not
after
one thing to do
7
with.
years, they should, don't tell me that this is the perfect act and the perfect job description.
No.
There has to be something.
Why?
Anybody that's, come on, anybody that's been in a job for 7 years, they have things they like, they have things they don't like. There's no perfect job.
Right,
So
but
they should have something.
Right, and if we ask
It may not be major, but
If we
it's got
ask
to be
them,
something.
if we ask them the question and they don't have an answer, why do we have to go looking for a problem
Because I
when there may
suggest
not
there
be
is
one?
something.
I agree with what Steve is saying, and I just want to bring more focus on what you just said, nothing major. Well, if it's nothing major, I remember Richard saying at some point in time, if it isn't broken, you don't fix it. So, the
We won't
reality,
know
I
the
agree with
answer.
Steve, what he's saying is that if the act is working for the selectmen who theoretically appoint the person, and certainly, again, in the people who have performed those services, they don't see anything major to change. Again, my comment, Mr. Holman, wasn't necessarily not to listen to the department heads, but I was getting a sense that this committee was looking to go to resources well beyond that. And that was the point of my comment, if I wasn't clear, that I don't see the need to do that. I certainly have no problem with the department heads expressing their experiences. But again, I agree with Steve. If nobody is identifying a real issue of concern, then that's it. And I don't agree with you that after 7 years, there's going to be something wrong. It sounds like you've already come to a conclusion there's something wrong. We're all keeping an open mind to see what all this information is for
We've
us.
all come to this group with a position. Let's not fool ourselves. We all have a position coming in. We're trying to be impartial, but we all have a position coming in. It's hard for me to believe that a job description after 7 years of somebody in the job is perfect.
Well, the job description is not what we're here to look
But
at.
the act.
The act is, right? So, and there can certainly be tweaks made to the job description that don't impact the act.
I personally.
That could be.
Let me do that. I think exactly that. That's something we have nothing to do with.
Right.
I want our Board of Selectmen to be the people who interact with that job description, with the assistance of the person on board.
So that means that we have to find major flaws with the act so that, that we can justify going through the tedious process of asking the legislature to change it. If we don't find major problems, if it's minor things can be dealt with the job.
With policy. With policy, we can make, I would say that in the absence of major changes, we might want to recommend a policy suggestion to the Board of Selectmen
Right.
that would address those minor.
Yes.
Right. So like, for example,
Exactly.
But in our last meeting, we didn't even get anything to even talk about. And that, for me, I mean, I brought up the issue of how we started with reference materials with the town of Groton and Newbury as two that are just out there. One's a special act, one is a charter. And how the fact that charters are required to have a structured review in a time period by law. We don't. Special acts, we can make the changes and try to run this.
that's
way
got
for 40
nothing to do
years.
with the act.
Yes, it does. That
No, it
actually has
doesn't.
lots.
It's a policy of the selectmen.
No, I don't think so.
It should be the policy of the
So
Board of
let's
Selectmen
back up as a
to
community.
review the act every so often. And
That's one of the
their
policies we
policy.
should suggest.
Right.
Yep.
So here's an example, is most communities that, like I said, let's go back to the discussion about how a charter committee does that. By law, the selectmen do not do that.
But we
Cannot do
don't
that.
have a charter.
No, stop for a second. I'm just talking about framework of how it works in government. You know, in the first meeting, I brought forward reference materials. One of them had to do with the Clark University study, which actually was very insightful. I don't know how many people have read it from cover to cover. I have twice. And I think that there's things that this community did when we changed that I don't think it was something that was intentionally wrong or not wrong or done or not done. Is I realized, for example, like when I look at the town of Groton, where they made a change and they said, geez, we're just not going to get everything right. This is going to change our town, the dynamics of our town. We're not going to get everything right. So they intentionally, in their first 7 years, built in a process in which they forced themselves to evaluate it as it was being implemented. We didn't do that in that thing.
That's a suggestion that we should make.
So that's an example.
That's a suggestion.
But that doesn't affect the act.
No, the act is the act. You know, to your point, Steve, nothing affects the act. The act is the law of the land in the town of Upton.
But if your complaint is that in towns that have a charter, they have a built-in mechanism for reviewing it, and we don't, we can remedy that by recommending to the selectmen
Every 5 years
that
we
you
review.
adopt a policy that says every X years, you need to go back and do what we're doing. And that solves the problem. That doesn't affect the language of the act.
Yes and no. I think in most cases, you're probably right. It would solve the problem. If a whole bunch of people got in as a selectman in the next cycle and wanted to just blow that policy away, they could probably do that pretty easily.
Make it a bylaw.
So then there's the bylaw.
Make it a bylaw, and then it takes an act of the governing body to make the change.
Correct.
So, you know, our suggestion could be at the next town meeting, whatever it may be, that we recommend that they make a bylaw that review the act every 5 years.
I mean, I back
I
up.
think that's a great idea. I think that's a good thing to do. But it doesn't mean that the act as it's currently written is bad. It just means we need to review it, and that's a good thing.
And in 5 years, there may be a significant issue that comes up in the way that's going, and what's going on, that needs either a policy change, a policy suggestion, a recommendation, or perhaps an act that needs to be modified. You know, those are all possibilities.
So one of the things that I had, after Ernie said, I'm one of those folks that I like to go back and read. It's my personality style. I'm an engineer. I tend to go back and read and study things. And I had some of my best thoughts, not necessarily in the moment, in a committee setting, but I went back and thought to myself that, oh, well, how do you do this? And as an engineer who's usually involved in designing something or solving problems, and not always, you don't have to always solve a problem because there may not be a problem, to your point. I came to realize that we really should be looking at a benchmark against the two reference materials. I'd be open to having, Selectman Fleming had mentioned that he, in his long history with this, has a lot of other communities that he would bring up. I would absolutely, completely welcome other communities' information to add to that reference list. So you can do a benchmark against what other communities are doing and why. And I think, in this case, I wouldn't necessarily go to a charter. I think I agree with you, because a charter is something that I think this committee's going to have to make a statement about. And we may not necessarily make a recommendation, we just can make a position about what a charter is and what the difference is, and put it off to the parking lot to the side. The second thing we should do is a gap analysis. So usually when I'm involved in some kind of a standards, so in my job, I'm a technical director, and I'm involved quite often in doing standards review, and actually updating and changing standards and processes in my company. When we realize that something isn't going right, we do what's called a gap analysis. And maybe a simple gap analysis against some of that reference material. Again, is another way.
I don't disagree with that approach. I'm an engineer myself, and I do that all the time.
As am I,
So, but it's not our mission, and I think if you want to do that, if you firmly believe that's in the best interest of the town, you need to convince the Board of Selectmen that that should be the mission of some other committee to take that on, not this committee.
Well, see, I think it's premature if I can continue with what Steve is saying. You said when something is wrong, we haven't heard anything yet there's anything wrong with this
Let
act.
me correct that myself, because actually I think I'll put in point is this, in my role doing that, we don't necessarily just wait till something's wrong. You know, there's plenty of things we just put on a review cycle and just attack. Because usually if we've done something wrong, then we're usually in trouble and we're in the defensive backpedaling mode. So I'm just trying to address.
But I think what you said is a reasonable thing to do. I don't disagree with that. It's just not what this committee has been
our
tasked to
charge
do.
did.
We developed this charge.
Right, and we've approved
And in
it.
the first
and the
couple of
selectmen
meetings, we
approved it.
talked about how that we were going to cover that as we go through this.
But that's not what's
And
in our
now we're
mission.
talking about now it's not our mission. I
So-
find that kind of interesting, actually.
Whatever, I mean, our mission is to look at the current act as it's written. I don't disagree that what you suggested is a good thing to do. It's just not what this committee has been asked to do by the selectmen. So I think if you can convince them that we need to do what you do, a benchmark, do a gap analysis, if you can convince them to do that, then great, go off and do that. But that's not what this committee
So,
is
Steve,
supposed to do.
what is the harm, after you ask your general question, is there anything you would change in the act, or anything working or not working? What is the harm in taking pieces of the act and asking a specific question?
Because
What's
it's
wrong with that?
prejudicing. You're prejudicing the person you're asking the question of. You're,
I'm just asking.
no, you're saying, I think there's something wrong with this. What do you think? That's how that comes across.
Even if that's true, then the person can say, no, I think you're wrong.
No, so
End of story.
here's a different scenario. We bring in a department manager,
What's the paper out?
and we would ask the department managers that we invite, we're going to tell them, this is what we're going to ask you. We're going to ask you if there's anything about the current act that you don't think is working, and if so, why?
Just a question.
And then the more important thing is, forget the act. You're a department manager, you report to a town manager. What is it about the relationship between you as a department manager and the town manager? What is it about that relationship that you like or don't like, and why? Forget the act.
And
Well,
then
there is a
Yeah.
specific, more specific question, but I just don't see the harm in asking a
But
couple
no,
more
the harm
questions
in
related to the act
citing,
itself.
the harm in citing, what about this section? The harm in citing that is you're prejudicing the witness, to use a legal term.
I mean, we're all.
I don't agree with that at all.
You are. You're presuming,
I'm
you're
not gonna
presuming
make
that
that
there's
comment.
something wrong with that section.
I don't
And
think-
you're pointing that out to them.
I want to back up, because I think one of the
yeah,
things that's
ridiculous.
interesting is usually when you do best practices, you're not trying to do something that's wrong.
We're not doing best practices. That's a separate activity. We're not here doing that. And like I said, I would support that activity, but that's not what
So
we're
what
here to do.
what do you support at this point?
Well, that's just what I said. What is it about the act that you like or don't like and why?
And
And what is it
any
about
situation-
your relationship as a department
So what
manager?
gets interesting is from the last meeting, I listened to specifically Selectman Fleming, because I have a lot of respect for Fleming, who's been here for 30 years. Incredible amount of institutional knowledge.
Right.
He's already signaled he's not going to be on the board going forward. I didn't hear much from him specifically last meeting.
He-
So let me finish what I was going to say. So I actually went back to watch a video from a selectman meeting where it was the first meeting about potentially forming this committee. And he was quoted that he had authored the act. He had been essentially almost personally involved in authoring the act, which is great. And then he was
He
quoted.
said he wrote he said,
He said he
I
wrote
personally
it.
wrote the act. He said it several times.
So
I
he
personally
said
wrote it
that.
myself.
And then he actually said in that meeting, there's plenty of things that I would do different and wrong and better. I mean, he basically made a statement that we're just all dodging around now. And at this point, I personally think that from a committee perspective, a thorough and comprehensive, I think we're arguing about what's thorough and comprehensive. I personally don't want to get into a huge effort here. And I think, to your point, our committee's charge is to do that review, to accept feedback from wherever it comes from, not just the town manager and the 2 or 3 department heads, because you don't necessarily get the whole picture of what's been going on. I know that I read back to the town manager profile, which was put together very nicely by your committee or MRI, and it talked about several things about in that profile of the challenges that the incoming town manager is going to face. And one of the things it talked about was integrations of boards and committees and volunteer participation in town government. The act has a huge bearing on that. And that's my opinion, to Debbie's point. It may not be your opinion, but it's my opinion. That's how I perceive it.
And
And it has a lot of bearing on the name of designation.
What is it about that
I
that isn't
personally,
working?
you know what, I look back, I think one of the things that surprised me the most as I've gone through 3 or 4 different special acts from other communities, including the town of West Newbury's, which is in process as we speak, in front of and their community seems rallied and excited about it. I've always been frustrated that Upton doesn't always rally and excite behind things, which is personally frustrating for somebody who, like yourself, has invested a lot of time, talent, and energy into being involved in town government. So I find that as an example of their act intentionally spells out the changing division of labor and authority with their board of selectmen and their boards and committees across the entire town government. So there's an example of their town act is only a few more pages longer than ours, but the framework's a little more organized, and it talks about 2 or 3 things that their manager's going to focus on. And it talks about preserving some of the things that did well and went well in Newbury that they don't want to lose. So that was, to me, that's a really interesting thing. And I've spent a lot of time looking at that. And so when I look at this committee, I think one of our jobs is to kind of hit on that kind of stuff. I'm not interested in some huge rewrite. You know, everybody, I felt like I kind of got a little piled on about a charter. But, you know, a charter is a big deal. And that it's big beyond the purview of this committee, other than just having a position on what a charter is or was not be. So that's what I kind of look at. I think, what does it, I think, and I spoke directly to Selectman Brochu, who was a friend of mine, who I supported through all of his service to the town. I served with him on committees. I told him 3 or 4 times throughout his service that I feel like the selectman's role and position is a little bit lost. And what does that have to do with the acts? I think it has a lot to do with the acts, because the selectmen have delegated a ton of stuff to the acts, whereas I see other committees and communities that do a little less and a little more, and they're a little more deliberate.
Right, but it's not up to this committee to decide whether the Board of Selectmen have too much authority or not enough authority, whether the town manager, that's not our job.
May I remind everybody in the committee, Mr. Chairman, if I might, you've been going for like 3 or 4 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you. We voted as a committee on our mission statement, again, basically to review the effectiveness and efficiency of the Town Manager Act. How are we going to do that? Well, we're supposed to consider specific revisions or changes. And again, I guess we as a committee then will decide who will come before us. I think we've already heard from selectmen previous and current who want to meet with us. We've identified we want to meet with the people that have fulfilled that role previously and currently have come before us. We're willing to meet with department heads who would report to the town manager. We said previously that we'd accept letters from anybody or people coming here in the community who will either say their name or send something with their name on it. We haven't gotten one communication. So if there are people in the community who have something to say, even maybe if there's a department head that isn't comfortable speaking on TV, that person, he or she, can write something or communicate with us in some way. So that fulfills, I think, but you know what, we can vote on it then as a committee. I think everybody's had an opportunity to explain to what depth they think we have to go. But again, we do this as a committee, not as individuals. So,
Well, and in terms of the public, I think it's time to put something in the paper. We've had 3 meetings so far, we've had no publicity. We've had a full town manager search. You can read all about the Northbridge town manager search in the paper. You read nothing about Upton. It wasn't in anything. So let's get something that says we've had 3 meetings so far, this is what we've done, and,
Dan is writing that, supposedly.
well, Dan and I were
Right.
supposedly writing it together. So I have a little draft, we'll send that out. I have people saying, what's going on? What's happening?
Tell them to watch TV.
There's zero coverage, you know,
Well, there isn't, I disagree with that,
not zero coverage, there is coverage on the,
right?
which is out of sync and doesn't, I can't even get it on my computer, but,
So, to be honest with you, I had DirecTV for 6 years, I didn't have any.
I don't have charter either.
The community we have just finally put the video on our website where you can, and I'm gonna work with Deb and Kevin McGovern, so our collective meetings can be seen in one place, not having to dig for them.
Oh, that's good.
Because I've had somebody complaining, I can't dig it.
Because it does, you have to go, it has, under local production.
It's not-
It's a little harder to find. But let's get something out there, because people are saying, what is happening? And that was one of our charges.
It's a shame that people are coming up to you, not you personally,
Right.
and asking you, what the heck is going on? It's been posted already when we meet, how often we meet, we're on TV. We've identified that the
Minutes are
record's
public.
available in a public place. It is so frustrating to think that a democracy means having to feed people information about their government and that they're not motivated, or whatever the reason is, for not making the effort to obtain the information that's readily available.
I don't think it's motivation. It's definitely not motivation. It's
What is
just,
it
it's, people are busy.
So am I.
Oh, I know we're all busy,
We all work.
but you're not in the little kid phase anymore, where you're running
When
from
I
camp
was, you
to
know what I did? I
thing.
was a selectman, I
I
went
know.
to, school,
I'm
was
sure.
at the sports.
I know,
helped
I know.
tourism,
Hold
helped
on
the
for a
club.
second, let's take it off, because this is where all of us are the same kind of folks. We're all those people, we're the example of the people that stay involved and have done all those things, to your point. So I want to go back to our meeting point. I just want to go back to what Debbie said, is I want 2 or 3 questions ahead of time specifically, so we can frame it, because I don't want to go through the format we did the last time. I felt like that was a panel discussion with no content, or very little content, and not a lot of depth in the exchange. And that may have been not an appropriate format issue. So,
But like I said when I started, the 2 people that we should ask those questions will be here. The existing town manager right now, interim town manager, and the past town manager. Those questions should be asked to them. Simple questions like, what do you like about the act? What don't you like about the act? How is it? Is it confining? Is it not confining? Is it where?
Or does it work, Richard, or does it not work? Something as simple as
Yeah,
that.
but I do think that you're going to get, you know, are you really going to get a person up here in the previous job, other than a few quotes from the newspaper, where they're going to say, yeah, I had a few problems, this person left, we've got X amount in attorney fees we didn't have before, this tax rate went up. You're not going to get any of that, no offense. And everybody here knows that, okay? So while it's a nice gesture, I don't know how beneficial it will be in the grand scheme of things. I actually reached out to get the meeting minutes from the 5th, 14th, and the 16th Board of Selectmen meetings, which all were when the interview process and stuff was happening for the new town manager. And I was told everyone's busy. It takes a month or two to get that stuff. And then, but you can watch it on TV. So,
Who told you that?
Mr. Reed. So he then said to me, I'm happy to understand, happy to help you, but the meeting minutes, and Sandra said the meeting minutes have not been written yet for 14 and 12. 5 is in draft form, and it was, what do you need it for? What do you need it for? You can view tapes of the meetings, and we'll get them to you when they're approved. Now, the open meeting law says that meeting minutes they can be in draft form before they're even approved. The law requires that existing minutes are made available to the public within 10 days of a request, whether they've been approved or remain in draft form. He said he would make them available once they were approved. As a public person, open meeting law, I can actually see them in draft form. So,
Did you write? Okay.
and I did make a formal request,
Okay.
and now I made a formal request. But it shouldn't be that hard, Mr. Holman, to
No,
get basic information.
I'm not
It
arguing.
shouldn't, when I went to look at actually the meeting minutes, the latest ones were from April. So I first reached out to Sandra and said, hey, any chance we can get these minutes up? Our minutes are approved and up, and Deb's gets them up the next week. So it was, and this is I hate to say it, it's the general feeling with the town hall is you have to jump through hoops. So I had to pull up the law in order, so Mr. Reed misquoted the law, which is not approved. No, I actually get to see the drafts. Any person, public citizen can see the draft. So
But
I shouldn't have to go through those
I thought he
steps.
said that the drafts weren't written yet.
Sandra said they weren't written yet. And why aren't they written? That was from the 12th, that was from the 14th.
So I'm gonna stop.
I'm just
because
saying,
I'm gonna get a
it's
little-
sort of,
First things first is that's not our committee's first
Right.
period, and it's sentence.
Well, by the way, that's unacceptable behavior.
and there's no, okay, so,
I would have said that.
and let me just say one thing, there's no accountability, and now, there's no way for me on the website to email Bob, Gary, or Steve
I agree with
and
that.
say, hey, guys, I got nothing from the town, I kind of got pushback from the town manager, I have no other avenue as a citizen. That is a big frustration for a lot of people
No,
that all sign the petition. We don't have a way to get to them. The buck stops, and Bob Fleming said the buck stops.
You're right, you shouldn't have to, but you can come to town hall, and you can sit during a meeting and during the public session.
Well, which
You
is
can
what
get up and
which
express
is
your
what I'm gonna have to do.
So there is accessibility. In addition.
Not immediate
in addition,
accessibility,
You've heard that, again, I think it was Picard who said that he would sit for an hour before the meeting.
which I'm going to ask for.
Fleming is always there before the meetings. I don't know about the other two. So they are accessible. I can understand your frustration.
But I couldn't just send an email, because I actually wanted to look, I wanted the skim version. I actually got a definition of what meeting minutes were. I didn't actually need that, because I'm well versed in that, but, so I felt there was pushback, and I didn't get basically any information because the job was not performed.
Now, and to that point, which is a valid point, you should be able to get the minutes. I know the Board of Health, we make a point of putting get the available minutes quickly and.
Every other board,
Now,
it's,
that being said, the one thing that I would say to you is that the current acting town manager, his job description is 20 hours a week.
Part-time.
And the previous, the one who was a full-time, Blythe, who was a town manager, you can go and get any of her reports, her weekly reports, those are available.
no, I totally understand, but
Your point is right.
And you're saying, well, bring him in, he's going to give us 30 years of experience, he's misquoting the open meeting law, I get it, but.
Oh, no, yeah, I wouldn't argue with
So
that.
I'm saying, okay, you bring him in, but, so are we going to really be getting the information we're looking for? I don't
I guess
necessarily
that's
know.
up to each one of us to judge and give
Correct.
weight to whatever any person who comes before us says, but I'm not going to disregard the gentleman's experience.
No, I agree, and I don't mean to disregard it at all, I'm not saying that,
So what I just hit it out quick, because I want to kind of move the discussion.
Yep.
on. I think this has been good discussion. I think we just hit on some stuff, examples of, I think, examples of where things maybe not working as well as they should have.
I'm not sure I'd say Dear Blythe, I think I'd give her the professional respect. Or, again, Blythe seems extremely personal for this, but
Respectfully request that,
Yeah.
okay.
So this is a draft quick,
A draft, a quick draft, not a quack, draft, quick.
a quick draft of an email for us.
No, I don't think it
And I
email,
would change, I'm sorry, a
formal letter.
formal letter.
Yes.
For us to look at. There's the middle section, which kind of probably goes against benchmarking, best practices,
Yeah, I would,
all kinds of stuff. So, I want to bring the committee back to, I think we need to get a little more specific. Because none of us have an extra 2 hours on the evening to not accomplish an effective exchange of information.
well, I think the third paragraph is basically what you say in the second paragraph. You just said it, this is how you make an apple pie, and then this is how you make an apple pie. So I don't know that we need that third paragraph. I'm comfortable with the first, second, and fourth paragraphs, but it's redundancy to me in the third
I
paragraph.
would agree, it's gotta be short. Yeah, you don't wanna make it too long. I would agree. I would agree.
You're basically asking, again, what worked and didn't work. You ask that in the second paragraph. That's it. And let the person come and express what they're comfortable expressing. That's my opinion.
I would agree.
I just think without something specific, what are you going to say? Yeah, I did a lousy job, and here's the 6 things I would change. I mean, I just don't see it happening. We're going to hear how great everything was. I'm just throwing it out there. I think we need a few specifics. I did read one of her minutes from January 1st, when she said she shared her frustration with the Board of Selectmen that performance reviews were not done.
You do realize that this is an invitation to her. This is not what we might ask of her. This is just the invitation.
Yeah.
Right.
So you want to give more detail than what paragraph 2 says for the invitation? We're going to do an inquisition. We want you here.
I don't really want to
letter.
Well, not inquisition, but-
I don't want to do any inquisition.
Right, I don't want any inquisition.
We're a simple committee reviewing something.
Who's gonna wear the red coat?
So, the dating and stuff, I don't know what you're talking about. So,
I mean, are we going to send her the act so she can look at that too?
My guess
She
is
knows
she
it.
knows,
Very
yeah,
intelligent.
Knows
probably.
the act
Okay.
inside and out, I'm sure.
I would
Okay.
bet on that. I would bet that the current acting town manager knows the act inside and out.
the interesting thing about the act that I come back to as a whole is it's just enabling language.
Say that again?
The act is just enabling language of how we structure our government. So it does have a tremendous impact on our community.
I just want to say something too.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what both the current and prior town managers' experiences are, not their interpretation of the act and what they would change in the act. I want to know what their experiences were and what worked and what didn't work. That's it. We don't have to, reinvent the wheel. That should give us enough information to do what our mission, our mandate is.
And you might be surprised at the preloads you assume we have. We may not have the preloads you're assuming, because I've had conflict, major conflict with the past town manager, Dick can testify to that. So, we have experiences on both
Are you
sides.
ready for testimony?
No. But am I not
I
correct?
will tell you, Al will argue with anybody.
Yes.
We don't have.
Depending upon the issue. No, I believe that it has to be the letter has to be kind of open-ended from the standpoint to invite her. We don't want a threatening letter. We don't want to say what's going to be a
Right,
royal
of course.
imposition, and we'll have instruments to,
Opposite one.
yeah, to,
Personally, you don't get really any feedback if there's a perceived threat.
correct.
There's zero feedback.
We look
You're gonna
forward,
get- you're
we
gonna
look
get-
forward to your valued
Yeah.
experience. That's what we, that's the tone. When she reads it, she needs to understand that what we want is her value experience in the position. And
So my concern to the committee was, I was going back to, I think that the only reason I was asking for a few simple questions to be developed going in is I don't want to sit in front of the town manager and talk about something that was so irrelevant to some of the issues that have raised why this committee even exists is kind of, fruitless, to be honest.
I think if there's a couple of questions that we can ask, that we ask the selectmen, that will be consistent and will be probative in nature. Gee, that sounds like a legal term, too, doesn't it? But it will be one that we can pick at and extract information. Because if you ask, my question was, is there any situations that came about that the Town Manager Act didn't help you resolve? Who better to know that than the acting town manager? And I will poke at that question, because I know there's some things that it didn't work on. So I can poke at that question from experience. I mean, those are the kind of things you want to know.
But isn't that asking a question where you know that you're trying to probe because you know there's a problem?
I know there are issues. I know there's issues.
I know that, I think we all know there are issues, that's my point, right, exactly.
But those issues may be on a personal basis, not on an organizational basis, so.
Sure,
I
but there's
don't want to go,
something.
that's the stuff that
I know.
I exactly think we should steer away from, because I think to
Yeah, no,
Steve's
that's personal
point,
stuff.
really ours is functionally about structure. Because the act really is about the structure and how it delegates.
Well, what are you gonna probe further?
Responsible.
Well, I can tell you that the experience that Richard and I had on a issue of, a bond issue on tearing down a building. And the town manager didn't know what the building inspector was doing and took action that the town manager didn't know about. It wasn't a personality issue, it was an issue of structure on how the cash flowed. There was a deposit taken, and the deposit was put in a file cabinet. Well, that's illegal, you can't do that. That deposit has to go into an account, as everybody knows. So that was a point of clarification and so those are things that the town manager didn't see. Those are issues that slipped through the cracks.
But how would you ask that question? I mean,
I just want to know if there are any things that slipped through the crack. Any
Okay.
action was taken by any town department that came to your attention that weren't properly acted on.
so what if the answer is no?
Well, then you say,
Oh,
well,
you said you were gonna probe on it.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
would
curious
probe,
whether you're
yeah,
gonna
I'd probe and
follow
say,
up.
well, why didn't you know about it? What things could happen
Right.
that would make sure you get informed on it? Any
Gotcha.
changes? A policy change that would
Right.
force that issue from the table, so you know that. But those are some things that just slip through the
Exactly,
cracks.
that's,
But those are, not, in that particular case, it may be a policy issue.
Yeah, absolutely, maybe just a simple policy change. And I
right.
would suspect that's the case.
But is it worth asking?
Absolutely, because you want to know whether or not there are policy changes.
That's
But I
exactly
don't-
what I said.
But what I'm, my
Many
point
minutes
is,
ago.
my point is, those are issues that don't have to be, those aren't questions that have to be written down. Okay, when we want to ask you this question, what's the answer to A?
I
If
just
it's-
want them asked, that's
Well,
all. I
that'll
don't
be-
care
I
how
mean-
they're asked, I just
Mr.
want them
Chairman?
asked.
Yes.
That's all.
I'm gonna
We've been
have
talking
that.
about this for about 50 minutes.
Yep.
So if I may make a suggestion, why don't we use as a initial question and make everybody who's going to show up from this point forward, that we're going to ask, what do you think has worked and not worked with the current Town Manager Act? I think everybody here is entitled to ask additional question, subject to your discretion and/or a board member's point of order. Again, because
And were there any actions that could have been improved by a policy change in the performance of your job?
No policy change, I'm not gonna talk about policy changes.
Well,
Has nothing to do with the purview of reviewing the acts, so policy is off the table.
Well-
I want to go back to essentially what has to do with the act
So,
specifically,
again,
and how that
I-
relates to.
I'm suggesting that every member of this committee has at least one mulligan and gets to ask, I guess, whatever question is important to them. So if Mr. Holman, for some reason, wants to ask something that's not relevant to the issue, I think that's Mr. Holman's prerogative to do that.
Sure.
But, and then we as a committee will give whatever weight we want to the question and answer the person gives. But I think after 50, 55 minutes of discussing this, can we move on and, you know, get through our agenda
So
tonight?
can we as a committee agree that I will put together, and Al, if you will help me put together 3 to 5 questions that try to narrow down the discussion a little bit? So we can provide those in advance to the two
Well,
folks
I
coming
think
in.
it would, if we can do that, I'm
Well, I
not.
think it's appropriate. The chair and the vice chair, I think, should do that.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
I hope you're taking breaks, but.
So we'll come up with 3 to 5 questions related to works and not works specific, and we're going to focus in on 3 or 4 parts of the act that were related to the petition. Fair enough?
Sure, we'll relate to the mission statement.
It's interesting the way we're at that. That's fine.
The petition has no relativity to what we're doing, other than the fact that it forced the formation of the committee,
Which was a very reactive thing.
well, whether it was reactive or right.
It was, no, it was reactive. I think it
Right, wrong, or different, doesn't
word
matter. That's why we're
reactive,
sitting here.
which is-
I
So
think
we'll
we
do
should-
that.
Send me an email with the questions. and then
I'll send an email with questions, and you're going to send me an email.
First you send me yours, and then I'll add some to it.
Fair enough. Any other questions about item number 2?
So you're gonna just take the third paragraph out of this letter?
Yeah.
and
I've
go?
taken the 3rd paragraph out.
Okay, that sounds good.
We're going to kind of probably develop questions that are somewhere in the general vicinity of that.
Okay.
A little more specific, at least try to be a little more specific. Any other discussion on item number 2? So the next item on the agenda was committee discussion, work session, develop questions, is what we just did. So
Right.
I've covered 2 and 3. Myself and the vice chairman have a homework assignment for that. Unfinished business from 6/1/2017 meeting, which we talked about committee media outreach and proposed the possible survey questions. I heard back from Ms. Fournier, she didn't have an opportunity, she's not here tonight, to help a little bit with the survey questions, but she said she'd get back to me on that, so we'll have to defer that to the
Who's
next
that?
meeting. Liz on our committee, Elizabeth Warner. And Donna Marie and I had talked quickly about putting in a short paragraph about what we've done today. It'll probably reflect, like the email that you saw, I went back to Michelle Sanford from the crier, that, you know, where we're at. And to this point, we all know that the only people watching us on cable are probably the few 50 to 100 diehards that really pay attention, like us,
50 to 100, my God.
and not the 4,000 or 5,000 registered voters in the community. And hopefully we'll spur a little more feedback. And hopefully it's pointed to the specific things that relate to just the act, and we'll do a good job of sticking just to that. Any other questions on item number 4 about that approach?
I will just
Would
state
the
one-
committee like to see, I'm sorry, would the committee like to see stuff before it goes to be published by email? I think we can do that.
but, with regard...
Done in a meeting.
With regard to survey questions, I just want to say again, I am definitely not in favor of anonymous surveys. So if that's what this committee is thinking of doing, I can't support that.
I would second that motion.
I really,
Talked about putting
we
names on
didn't
it.
talk about, yeah, you talked about putting names on it. It didn't say about anonymous, I think that,
Well,
let's get that.
we discussed that in the context of survey questions.
Yeah.
So if you're working on survey questions, my question is, I don't think it's appropriate to allow people to respond anonymously. Al, last meeting, mentioned the fact that on Grafton's website, they have a charter committee, and anybody can add their 2 cents, whether they live in Grafton or not. That's totally bogus. and
It has
no meaning.
The only valid survey that would be valid, in my opinion, is if we went door to door and asked some questions. I think that makes it valid. If you do it any other way, the validity is questioned in my mind, because anybody can say anything when they write it in an email or a Facebook post.
Well, I think two things is, I would agree that there's nothing in Facebook. I wouldn't solicit anything. I'm a very active person on Facebook, personally. So I'm very familiar with Facebook and Twitter. Use it regularly, personally and professionally. I'm not by any means going in that direction. I think that all that I would look at from a survey standpoint is we had talked about the example of the school district that sends out, I think, a 5 or 10 question survey monkey
Right,
that's tied to an email address
correct.
for somebody that has a student
Yeah, in the district.
in the district.
Right.
Same kind of thing. If we were going to survey anybody, to your point, Steve, it would only be tied to that email. And the way like SurveyMonkey works, you probably, you're a tech guy, you can understand that. It gets tied to that email address, that IP address. There's no way to triple it, duplicate it, it just
Right.
doesn't work. So.
Is it possible?
My point would be, let me finish one quick and hold that thought for 1 second, Alan, is just to put together, because personally, I would rather just have this committee. As we're going into the summertime, it's going to be really hard to get these people to come here, and I don't want to have long question and answer sessions. I'd rather have us come up with 5 or 10 pretty reasonably broad questions related to the things where you have an agree, disagree, like, dislike kind of approach, because that gives you a little bit of a metric, and it's not like a damning thing. It's like, I don't like so-and-so, and, you know.
Again,
That's the only survey that I think that I am even entertaining having something to be done, and I'm using this school district as an example of
but if
a way to do
if
it.
I can submit my answers without my name,
No, you can set it up to where you're required to put your name related to emails. SurveyMonkey can be set up that way
Okay.
too. So absolutely, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, the problem I see with that is, you don't know, I could put Alfred Holman as my name, and I'm not Alfred Holman answering. Is it possible to do like a 911 that they do, where it goes to every phone number in town, and somehow, either through voice or through hitting a button, you answer the 4 or 5 questions, yes, no, or something along that line? I think that might be a credible
That costs
response.
about $1,500 to $2,000 to do something like that.
Okay.
There's surveys like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so otherwise, again, it comes down to the willingness or desire of a community member to communicate with this committee. I hope that that's what if I can finish, your monthly newsletter to the community that hopefully the town crier will be able to publish to inform people of what's going on, and you'll certainly tell them how they can express and get their opinions and concerns to us as a committee. So,
Yep, we're gonna go through the prior.
I'm going to make a statement that Bob Fleming made probably 15 years ago to a FinCom committee. Were you on the FinCom when he made the
not
statement?
15, about 25 years
Was
ago.
it 25 years ago when he made the statement? There was a question at the FinCom where they said, oh, we need to put an announcement in the newspaper, so we'll put something in the town crier. And Bob Fleming, I didn't say a word, Bob Fleming said, just when did you think the town crier became a resource for the town?
Oh, it is a public resource. It's a source of information, so
So when exactly did the ink be free for the town of Upton? Now, I say that with tongue in cheek. I don't have a problem in publishing information, but there are 2 people that pay for ink in my paper, advertisers and me. Town doesn't pay for it. I pay for it.
you know what I see as the benefit, seriously, is that your advertisers will be even more pleased because people will go through that newspaper to read the article and pay more attention.
I'm sure that if I send a letter to the North Pole, they'll send something.
And I always buy, by the way, from your advertisers to support your paper.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. But I just want everybody to understand that I don't have a problem in publishing something like this because it is as news and it's informed the community. Make no mistake, it's not a public resource.
Correct.
Okay?
And like I said, for many cases, a lot of people, you know, like I said, you gotta get in a couple different places. Upton Upton Dailies become another one. And they're usually looking for.
It will go through my editor, and she'll review it, and so understand, anything that's published will be run through an editor. I have,
The other option, honestly, is to ask the selectmen for resources to do a mailing to every home in this community with the name of a person, maybe that can be done somehow, and have it returned to us. If somebody wants to take the time then to get an envelope, address the envelope and return it, or drop it off at town hall, that might be another resource if...
they do that every year with the
I
census.
think, first,
That's anonymous, though,
discussion wise,
isn't it?
I think we'll just keep,
They do that every year with the census.
yeah,
So, I mean,
there's two things to talk to about it. I think just making some room for some articles. You can get up on Upton Daily without having to go through the resources that Al has to expend in his paper to make sure that there's room for ink and printed space.
I didn't say I wouldn't do it, I'm just saying that there are constraints.
Sure,
I mean, it's,
absolutely.
it has to be concise and it'll
Yeah, I
have to
think
be-
it's it's one of those shorter ones that says, hey, this is out there.
No,
Please
that's
reach
not a
out with
problem. And
feedback.
make sure we have an email address for people to send stuff to.
I would want it to be sent to the TMA email address. so
Sure,
somebody can see the
absolutely,
screen.
absolutely, so that would be
Which is
published,
good.
yep.
So is that something we can write up, send it to everybody, we can agree via email, so we can get something out, or is there gonna be a delay?
Well, my next paper is 7/7. So if you get something to me in the next couple days, 500 words, we can get it in.
Okay,
I mean,
What day specifically, Mr. Holman?
I need it Monday, but actually it should go to my editor tomorrow, the next day, so,
okay.
So by Friday?
Friday.
Well, Friday's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then you send it to send it to manager at towncrier.net, or towncrier.us. Towncrier, manager at towncrier.us. And ask that it be forwarded to Jane, editor too.
So we'll get that taken care of. We'll also reach out to the Upton Daily and post the same thing. I think those two places between a web-based and paper-based have covered the majority of the folks that, probably the two biggest places people look for stuff.
But you want
Which
to
is
make
good.
sure and identify the next meeting
Yep,
Yep,
and the email address to each,
Yep.
Yep.
and where they can go to get minutes.
yep.
so we're tabling the survey, because to your
Okay.
point, we don't have that. But again, that only framework is not gonna be, and I think the survey to the committee, and we don't have to get into this, a detailed discussion tonight, I don't see the survey going out to the community. I see the survey as a way to survey town employees and volunteers only, using an email address that's used by the town to officially communicate with them, so you can have some
It's-
connection to
right,
what's going on.
legit.
So, and like you said, there's a way to blind out, there's no reason to get into the details of that. And I think you can design a survey that has nothing to do with letting people say things that are inappropriate or unnecessary for us to deal with.
Correct.
I would like to have in the minutes that the selectmen have an unfiltered access via email. And by that I mean, if you send an email to the selectmen, it really goes to the town manager, and then the town manager elects whether to forward it to the selectmen or not. And I personally think that's not acceptable behavior. So
Okay?
Well, Al, I've been under the thing where every dinner time, every night, I had a phone call. There was not a darn, in the many
No,
years
I'm
I
talking
was
about
there,
email. I'm talking about email, not phone number,
No,
email.
email.
Direct email
They just
address.
pile up in a box.
Which
Yeah.
then you can decide when you want to read or not.
Right.
There's no way, no email access.
No email access to the
There's
selectmen.
no access anymore to the selectmen, who Mr. Fleming said,
well, there's
only
really
work about
no
6 hours a
email-
week, not
there's
like
no
you
email
gentlemen.
access to us. There is to the board.
There is actually, TMA up in the,
TMA.
yeah.
Yeah, you
There
could go.
is, but it doesn't really, it doesn't go anywhere but right.
Actually,
It
thankfully.
goes to all of our email addresses.
It's all
Right.
collected up under Deb,
Right.
Town Hall structure,
Right.
so
Yeah.
we just happen to be viewers of the emails, which is good.
Right.
Because of our clerk.
But I'd just like to ask that.
Yes. So we'll have to defer the survey, but to your point, Steve, I think those points are well taken. I know for me personally, I want to hear from boards and committee volunteers. I think it's reasonable to just.
Because
do
they're
something
under the
for-
charge of the town manager.
And none of those folks are gonna be people that are gonna give us nefarious
Right.
things to.
Correct.
So. Any other questions about item number 4 on the agenda?
Item number 4. Nope.
So item number 5, we'll just add one more date in July,
Yep.
which was 7/27.
Hang on.
Yep.
13th and 27th.
27th of July.
So I would ask Deb if you could do me a favor, and find out the way to communicate with Blythe. I stopped in and talked to Bob Reed about the 13th or the 27th, and I'd like to do the same thing for Blythe, so we can give her a heads up, and then we can figure out which day that falls.
I'd ask for one more thing. I noticed that the town crier identifies community events that are occurring. I'd maybe suggest that maybe our monthly meetings, that maybe it be forwarded to the town crier, just again, trying to reach out to the community. Hopefully they take the time to read the paper. So if at some point people say, gee, I didn't know about it, again, I said before, the responsibility lies with them. But if you're using every media resource, which I know that selectmen did, I know that town government tries, and maybe also you could ask the clerk, who I believe was responsible when the Upton Men's Club gave that display outside, to put when our meetings are, date and time, and that the public is invited. I can imagine that they'll be willing to do that, and if we don't get sufficient public input at that point, then
Right, we're trying,
responsibility lies with the
right.
public.
I
Done
agree.
what you can.
And I'd ask
Right.
everybody here to
I
call
agree.
everybody who comes to them and says, what's going on, say,
Yeah,
come here, talk, tell your friends, call 10 people.
I have started to do that as of last meeting. I said, please.
Well, I'm not worried, you only get 2 or 3 friends, so I'm not really worried.
Oh, that was brutal, Alan. Uncalled for. But expected.
Slander.
point of order.
But expected.
Yeah, if you could just get a hold of the best way that selectmen would like us to communicate to her.
But somebody has to send something to the town
We have a
crier.
letter.
Okay,
Yeah.
of when the meetings are monthly, so maybe we should do August meetings, if the paper is able to get out, the next one is, what did I say? Oh, I'm sorry, July. Let's do
13th and the
July
27th.
On the
27th.
22nd, there's no paper. We publish one paper in July, then we go to the twice-a-month schedule in August.
Okay, so our 4 dates for August, and there only were 4 dates. They were the 13th of July and the 27th of July, and the 10th of August and the 24th of August. Those are the only dates that we identified.
Will you
So
send
everybody
something?
can put those dates in their calendar.
We'll put it in at the, with our little blurb.
Yeah, we'll put that in the blurb.
Yeah.
I think we'll stick to
Date,
that.
time, location
Yep.
of this.
Always be 6:30 on a Thursday night.
You can always check the town website.
And I think that helps a lot. That helps us as a committee.
But also follow up,
That change people around.
also follow up with the clerk and let the clerk know maybe if they could start putting it
Post it.
on the posting,
Yeah.
that the Upton Men's Club donated to this community.
Yes, ma'am.
You had a point you weren't including here. Was it that the...
Selectmen need to have, we need to have unfettered,
Direct,
direct
access to
Don't
them
use-
direct
somehow.
access to them.
fettered, fettered I like, but we can't use that.
Direct select access to the select.
Right,
Yes.
email access to the selectmen,
Correct.
unfiltered.
Okay, so we have our dates.
Exactly.
We have our game plan. We got our idea of getting several questions between myself and Al. So we are up at item number 6. We're cruising along. Everybody's time is done in the summertime. Let's try to stick to time. And that is the opportunity for public to address the committee. I first asked the committee if there's any concern about having that. Seeing none, is there anybody from the public that would like to address our committee?
Lynn Daggerty, 10 Silent Lane. Can I sit?
So you said it right down.
You sit next to Deb. She's super nice.
I just have a couple of, hopefully suggestions. And one would be that, when you, reach out to everyone, if you put it in a PowerPoint, Mr. Fowler will put it on the cable television station. That'll help, will help a little bit. We lost the Milford, is it Middlesex News or Milford Daily News? We don't seem to have any coverage from that reporter at all since we lost the prior reporter. So there's no coverage in that venue, and I find that a lot of people want to know what's going on. I happen to print a lot of documents and hand them out to senior citizens, or I print them, you know, and post them different places. I've also given them to Mr. Fowler, like I said, so you know, hopefully then you'll get some more input, you know, just a suggestion that way.
Listening to, just correct me, there's something that I get called the up and below, that maybe you could reach out to getting head to that digital resource, and I can imagine there are a couple of hundred people in town that probably get updates and things that are on Upton as far as our meetings.
Well, it's, what do we call it, the Upton?
Oh, Upton
Upton
Daily?
Daily.
You're talking about Upton
Yeah, it's Upton
Daily?
Daily, yeah.
Yeah, she mentioned that, yeah.
That'll be on there.
I think the other thing is, I just want to comment, and I appreciated that if we did have direct access to the selectmen, I know I've had several issues in the past that I did not have direct access, and I'd like to also reiterate that at several points, meeting minutes and so forth, I directly quoted Chapter 66 of Mass General Law, Section 10, and made the request in a formal format, and I'm still waiting for certain information 3 years later, and I'm not going to ask it again.
Lynn,
So,
what do you do for the town? I actually, you work...
I don't do anything for the town anymore, I've
Oh, you don't?
resigned.
Okay.
No.
So you're just a citizen?
I'm just a citizen now, that's right. So I'm just giving you some citizen input, not as a past employee, but citizen input, and hopefully it'll help. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're on to item number 7, which is other items not reasonably anticipated by the chairperson 48 hours in advance. I haven't anticipated anything else other than that. I think we had a good discussion today about questioning on votes. So any other items on that? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion for item number 8 on the agenda.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that motion. Yeah. You can beat it.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, thank you.